Welcome to the 117th episode of the Flip Learning Network podcast. I'm your host, Roy Cockrum, with my co-host, Joan Brown. Today we have on the show Kevin Brookhouser, which I've had on the show one other time before. Kevin, can you tell us just who you are and what is your role in education?
Sure. So I've been a teacher for 15 or a few more years than that. I'm currently the director of technology at York School, which is a small independent school in Monterey, California. I also teach a class I've rested my English teacher hat, which I've been teaching English and history for about that whole time, and I'm now teaching a coding class, a computer concepts and programming and design course, and so that's been a really fun challenge for me, and love where that's going. And then I also do a lot of consulting work and training around the country, and particularly talking about the 20 time project moving forward. Yeah.
That's interesting because I moved out of the classroom this year from an English teacher role as well, and I'm doing some innovative. My title is Director of Innovative Teaching, and this past 3 weeks I've been teaching robotics, and I'm just like, I don't know anything about this. So it's great because when the kids ask questions, I say, I don't know. Let's figure it out.
Let's figure it out. So. Yeah, that's the kind of modeling that I think our students need. The reality of, you guys know this, the reality of learning anymore is not finding a teacher to teach you to do this. It's, having the skills to research, just-in-time learning, getting that solved. All right, I want this robot to do this thing. All right, let's figure out how to do it.
Figure it out, yep. So let's talk about 20% time. First of all, just to catch everyone up on what that is, do you want to give a brief overview?
Yeah, well, let me start with kind of what's motivated me to do this 5 or so years ago. I happen to read history and read the news quite a bit, and I see a lot of major problems in this world that we adults just haven't seemed to been able to figure out how to solve them. You name it: global terrorism, water crisis, energy, nuclear proliferation, all of these things that are these major problems. The military sometimes calls these wicked problems. And they're problems that we don't have the solution to, and I'm not very optimistic that we adults are going to figure those out very soon. But I am quite optimistic as a teacher that if we create the right environment, that our students can become the people who will solve these problems for us. So I'm kind of putting all my bet on my students that they're going to know how to solve those problems. We can't teach them to solve the problems, but I think we can create an environment that is conducive to them learning how to tackle these major problems, but in innovative ways. And so I've been doing a lot of research on that over the past 10 years or so, and I came across this book by Daniel Pink, and he's like my hero. This guy changed my life. And the book is called Drive, and it's really a book that's written towards business managers. And the whole point of the book is to get business managers to create an atmosphere where employees are more innovative. And he takes a look at companies like 3M and Google and how these companies absolutely depend upon innovation and how they create a culture of innovation. And so what Google does is has this program called it's a culture of 20% time. So Google. It's traditional for Google engineers to take on projects that aren't necessarily endorsed by management, but they just see these projects that have a purpose and have a strong meaning, and then they go out and solve these projects on their own and using the resources of Google. And some of our favorite services that came out of Google, including Gmail, is a 20% project. So what these projects have that allow for that kind of innovation are the 3 pillars that Daniel Pink says are a part of any sort of innovative culture, and that is providing people with autonomy, giving people more freedom in what they're doing and how they do it. Mastery, showing people that they are incrementally getting better and better at the tasks that they're taking part in. And then purpose, making sure that the work that they're doing has a purpose outside of themselves or even outside of just their own company, but that there are real people out there being served by the work that they're doing. And so 20% time at Google does that, fits that mold pretty easily. And so one of the things that myself and a lot of other teachers kind of had the same insight at the same time is, well, why don't we apply 20% time to our classes? And hey, let's tell our students 1 day a week, you're going to take on a project, make sure that it's a project that has a really valuable purpose. And you know, it's not going to be something that we can come up with, the teachers can come up with, but you're going to come up with something. Make sure that it has an audience and you're really serving somebody. And we've been doing it ever since. We've been rallying around this hashtag 20 time. And then so last year, every time I have my students do a 20% project, I take on one myself. A couple of years ago, I started this website for writing instructors called GrammarMe, grmr.me, which has gotten a lot of traffic, and it's been a lot of fun. But then this past year, my project was this book, the 20 Time Project, and got it funded by Kickstarter, and that was funded in May. Spent the summer writing and working really hard with my editor, Ria Mengen, who's amazing, and we got this published about a month ago, and getting a lot of traffic and some fun book sales. So this book really kind of outlines what I've learned through my experience, and especially shows all the failures that I experienced myself, which is probably inevitable for any teacher who takes on these kinds of projects.
Have any of your students' projects gone mainstream? I mean, actually been marketed or used?
Yeah, so you know, I had one student the first year that I did it. He started a business. He wanted a web design business, and so he went to local merchants who had either no presence on the web or pretty lame presence on the web. And we all know those businesses that have pretty lame websites. And he went up to those businesses and came up with prototypes of how he could help them create a more dynamic and modern website. And within a few months, the kid became profitable. And so that's still a running business for this kid. So last year, one of my students started a YouTube channel. A couple of my students do this. This really ties into kind of that flipped learning model in the video creation. So one of the coolest, some of the coolest projects out there involve video production, and there's so much opportunity, and the costs have dropped so low that now, and the ability to distribute video has skyrocketed, obviously. So one of my students really loved reading and wanted to share that reading with other students. She saw that not a lot of people her age were reading, and so she started a YouTube page dedicated to book reviews. And she now has, I feel like I've got a pretty good YouTube presence, but she is crushing it right now, and she's filling my subscriber list. I'm really happy for her. So that's Maria's project, and she's featured on my website, 20time.org, as are some other student projects. So if you go to 20time.org/students, you'll see Maria Muses, which is her YouTube channel, and then right there it says subscribe to the channel. So hey, subscribe to Maria's channel. It's awesome. If you want to see a kid really getting other kids fired up about reading, this is a great way to do it.
Oh, that's great.
Well, that's why I wanted to bring you on, because I got your book here, and you know, I love talking about 20 time, and you're a great resource for everyone, so I wanted to bring that on. One thing I've kind of heard you saying, and I always tell people, is every year I modified my 20 time project just a little bit. I said, that quite didn't work the way I wanted it to. What can I add, or what can I change? What's one key thing that you've added or changed or modified over the years that really helps determine the success of projects?
Yeah. Well, can I give two? So
Sure.
I'll start with a change and a failure. I changed my project this year, and it's kind of been a disaster for me. So since I'm no longer teaching an English class, I kind of took this position that, you know, when I was in English class, I made writing a very heavy component of the project, and so now that I'm teaching a tech class, I kind of scaled back on the writing component, and I no longer required that my students blog every week, and that was an utter failure. I had no sense of how important it was for the students themselves to track their performance on a regular basis, and that they wouldn't just naturally do it their own. And that blog component, I really think, is it's a firm foundation for them to see that they're moving forward. So, you know, that second pillar of an innovative culture, the mastery purpose, I think the blog not only provides accountability for them to provide me, but it also kind of gives them a sense that they're moving forward when they see that accumulation of blog posts. Really helps them. And I see that my students are struggling more with staying on task without the blog. So that's one of my failures. One of the other things that I've been really trying to tweak and get it right is the whole mentor program. After my first year, it really became clear to me that I wanted my students to have a mentor besides just me, guiding them through the process. Hopefully, it's a mentor that has some expertise in the topic of project that they decide to take on. But eventually I decided that was less important than it simply being an adult that this child and the parents trust to just keep them on track and provide just adult experience. Great, if it is an expert in that field, that's great, but it's just another feedback mechanism. But the challenge with that is either making sure that you're respecting that mentor's time by using some of it, by not completely ignoring that relationship, and also not abusing it, right? And so I couldn't really figure out how to do that. I used to have these really rigid requirements that you must email your mentor at least, I don't know, every other week or something, and that didn't work out too well for me. I felt that was too rigid and didn't really take advantage of the fluid nature of the relationships. And so what I found that's working pretty well is that the requirement for the mentorship was simply an introduction, and that the students and the parents agree that this is a great person to partner with through this project, and that they have a meeting and talk about the project, and then they can come up with where they think that they can negotiate what is a meaningful schedule of interaction between the two. And maybe it's ad hoc, maybe it's on a regular basis, or maybe it's 3 times throughout the year. And I think that works okay, and that there's always that, no matter how they determine to work out that relationship, at least there's someone that they can email if they have a question, or that hopefully that someone is just checking up on them as well and feeling like they do have someone who is invested in the project.
Is that someone that the student chooses?
Yeah, ideally it's someone the student chooses. Sometimes I just happen to know the right person to make those connections. So I have done that a few times, probably more than a few. Maybe a quarter of the time I happen to know a great adult that would be good for that. But I make sure that the parents are involved as well in agreeing that this is a person that this student can contact.
I think one of the best mentor relationships that one of my students had was he wanted to learn Java, and he found a college student who was studying computer programming, and then he took a Khan Academy class, and his mentor did the class at the exact same time, and then every week they discuss what he was learning in the class, and the kid like soared and did great things because of that mentor relationship.
Oh, that is phenomenal. Yeah, I have one student who wanted to get into 3D modeling and design, and so he decided that He found, I connected him with an architect, a guy who recently designed one of our buildings at our school, and they developed a really great relationship over time. And now the kid's a senior, about to graduate, and he wants to go into architecture school.
Sure.
I think you really have to stress to the students how important it is to be very intentional about choosing your mentor and to really put some thought into it, because I had a lot of kids who chose the easiest person they could find and got nothing out of the relationship.
Well,
and
a lot of my students also find out that adults are really busy people. We're all crazy busy and not as reliable as we would like to be. Think. Yeah, so it's a and even if it turns out to be a failure, there's a lot of learning opportunity there as well.
So Kevin, are you talking about high school students primarily?
So that's who I work with, right? And I've been mainly 10th graders.
Okay.
But this whole program is much more tested, and there's a lot more experience out there. Programs like this for elementary and middle schools. It's just they're called Montessori schools.
Right.
And do it 100% of the time. I always know my Montessori students when I get them, because when I introduce the 20% project, most of my students are shocked that I'm introducing this kind of project and are clueless about what to do. But the Montessori kids, they just get right to work. Okay, we're working on a project. We're going to go help people. Sounds good.
Is it easy to do it over years? If you have a 10th grader that's still working on it, can they go ahead into their freshman, sophomore, junior year, keep it going?
That's the dream, right? I mean,
right.
I really hope that that's what they do. They end up creating something that takes on a life of their own, and maybe they turn it into a lifelong project or a business or whatever. I mean, yeah, that certainly happens. I've got students last year who started they love cooking, and they started an Instagram account called Cook That. And if you Google Cook That Instagram, you'll see their account, and their account's taken off, and they keep posting. So yeah,
that's fabulous.
I hope it keeps going.
I'm just looking at it as far as the institution goes, as far as the school or a district.
Right.
How would you institute it so that if a kid needed more than a year, for example, to complete or see to fruition something?
Yeah.
Is it easy to pass it on to the next teacher? Or?
Well, no, not necessarily. I mean,
right.
It takes a lot of you're definitely putting your neck out there. A teacher who decides to adopt 20% time, it's a risk, right? I mean, I will say it's the biggest risk is among the students, parents, and other faculty. One of the things I've found is that administrators, I haven't found a single administrator or principal who thinks this is a bad idea. I often get the question, how do you convince administrators to do this? I haven't had to. I show them my letter and the rationale behind it. As long as they know about it, they seem to buy in. But it's a matter of communicating to parents who don't understand this and don't have the experience of why this is a good idea. So anyway, it is tough for other teachers, and when you find something, you go to a conference and you see something about 20% time, you decide to adopt it, and you think it's so great. It's not easy to, when you have all this enthusiasm, to convince other teachers to take it on as well. So, but here's the secret truth about 20% time at Google. Google doesn't actually give you 20% time. You have to take it. And so there isn't like a slotted time that Google offers, and management doesn't officially give any Googler an official, like, this day you can work on your project. They really kind of have to work on it on their own. And, what you guys do and what I do, we have day jobs, we're teaching, we've got full-time jobs, but then we go out and do these things like podcasts on our own because we derive great joy out of it, right? And maybe they won't have a teacher that will offer that one big block of time a week or whenever, but hopefully that they kind of invest in themselves and take some of that time that, maybe they can't play as many video games or read as many novels or whatever, and because they're taking on this own personal project. but I think it's totally worth it.
Yep. Yep.
What do you say, since we're talking about kind of continuing on over years, what would you say, or advice to somebody who might want to try to do this school-wide?
Well, I mean, okay, so if it were, I think you would need to have, in this hypothetical situation, is it by an administrator or by a teacher?
Administrator.
Administrator? To take it school-wide? Wow, that's a great question, and I've never really put any thought into it. You know, I think okay, so here's what you need to do. I think you need to find those teachers that are, you know, really itching to do more or to take on a new challenge and are always curious about different ways to attack a problem, and definitely let those teachers run with it and see what happens. What I would hope is that through projects, so like one of the things that I do is there's these little subversive little tricks to try to spread this idea throughout the culture of my school and further. One of them is the elevator pitch. So this is one of the 5 steps of any 20% time project. Once the ideas have been generated and proposals have been written and people have started doing the work of their project after interviewing clients and that sort of thing, I ask my students to write and rehearse an elevator pitch. And it's the notion is you're stuck in an elevator with someone who has the power to make your project a reality. And you've got the time it takes to get to the top floor to convince that person, right? And so every entrepreneur should have that elevator pitch memorized and ready to deliver just in case they find that right person. And so I require by the middle of the year that they all have these elevator pitches memorized. And so what I tell all the teachers, because I was teaching all of the 10th graders, I told all the teachers, hey, every single 10th grader has an elevator pitch memorized. And they're really great. So when you see a kid in the hall and he's a 10th grader, stop him and say, hey, tell me about your project. And they should have something pretty impressive to tell you. And so I hope those really cool stories just kind of percolate out there and people see that these kids are doing real positive work and learning a ton in the process, and that people naturally see the value of it and want to expand it throughout the school.
That'd be fun to grab somebody and ask them. I'm thinking it right now.
So you mentioned earlier that you do consulting work, and we know you from the Google Summer, the Google Apps for Education Summits. But you've started into a new venture with this Future Ready initiative. Can you tell us about this?
Yeah, so I've been working with EdTech Team on developing kind of a roadmap of what a future-ready school and curriculum should look like. And what we've determined is that that there are really 6 pillars to what any school should be considering as they're mapping out their future-ready program. And those pillars are student agency, which is my specialty, courageous leadership, empowered teachers, inspiring spaces, and then a combination of infrastructure and hardware and software. And we believe that that the whole future-ready thing isn't a destination, yet it's a mindset. To constantly be checking in on how are we doing on those criteria. What sort of projects are we providing our students to provide them agency in their education? How courageous are we being as leaders? What are we doing for teachers to give them the ultimate autonomy and empowerment? And then what do our spaces look like? And so what we're doing is we've started a global summit program. And let's see, on March 7th, we're going to be in Chicago. And I'll be talking about student agency, but there's going to be different sessions on each one of those strands. If you go to futurereadysummit.com, you'll see the Future Ready Summits that are out there. I'm also going to be in Brazil, if anyone's down south in South America. Later in, let's see, that's going to be mid-April. And again, that's on futurereadysummit.com. Really excited about that program. You know, Obama, Obama recently gave an announcement back in November that he wanted to see hundreds of United States superintendents take this Future Ready pledge, and we're partnering with them as the Future Ready Schools Initiative. We're the group that is providing those summits.
Yeah, I just brought up that pledge. I state your name, superintendent of such and such a school district, do hereby affirm the commitment of this district to work with students, educators, families, and members of our community to become future ready by engaging in a wide range of activities. And then it goes through each of those pillars.
Yeah.
That's impressive.
It's pretty exciting. And a lot of superintendents and principals are on board with it. And so what we need to do is make sure that teachers have the autonomy to take those on as well, and then they provide their students with projects that get them ready for their future and kind of really rethink what learning is. There's I always say there's always going to be a place, I think, for a teacher to deliver content to students. Now, often that's going to follow the flipped model when it's trying to get students to understand that force equals mass times acceleration. You can get that instruction on a video, and then using the flip model, you can practice it while you have an expert in the classroom.
But you just pointed out with your 20% time that mentors are almost the key. It's exactly the same thing. Teachers are always going to be the key.
Teachers are always going to be the key. We teachers are in a great position career-wise. Very, very important. But we will need to kind of rethink part of what our role is as a teacher. I think we're still going to be standing up in front of the class sometimes, but a lot of times we're going to be right there, shoulder to shoulder. Maybe a lot of times, just like Troy was having with his coding class, it can be side by side. The robotics. Let's figure out how to do this on our own. Let's figure out together. I'm going to take this. You're going to show me what you've learned. Yep.
Yeah. Hey, can you go into some of these parts of the Future Ready initiative as far as these pillars? I guess what I'm looking at deals a lot with financing some of this as well. When you're talking about getting quality devices in the hands of students, or you're talking about infrastructure as far as Wi-Fi goes, how is it that you're addressing that aspect of it?
Yeah, I'm really optimistic about hardware and software. I think that we're seeing the costs for those plummet. I certainly am conscious of the digital divide, and I still think it is the single greatest place where we should be putting our energy, is to making sure that every student, especially those in rural communities and in lower income communities, that they do have access to the internet. They need it more than anybody else, and they stand to benefit more, and we should be stopping everything we're doing and make sure that every kid has a Chromebook and a Wi-Fi network that he can connect to at all times. The students who do have access to that are at a remarkable advantage to those who don't. And so I think that that's really important. But and I know that we're not there yet. But
no, and it is political too. I mean, it boils down to school boards, or it boils down to state governments a lot of times. And even though you do have superintendents saying the pledge, they want the same as you. Right. But sometimes they just don't have that funding, and they do their best.
Well, tragically, we live in this model where schools get funded by the local real estate taxes. I think that is, a grave injustice.
It is.
And I don't know if I'm going to solve that or not. But the reason I am optimistic is I see the trend, and the trend is going with bandwidth shooting up. Access to bandwidth is spiking, and the cost of these devices is plummeting. We can now get a pretty darn good Chromebook for $225.
Right.
That's the cost of what, 3 textbooks?
Right.
Maybe 2. All right. What textbooks can we eliminate and replace with Chromebooks?
I'm with you. I like the EdTech Team model, and their Google Apps summits have grown immensely over the last year. I mean, they've done like 3 or 4 times as many as they did the previous year.
Yeah.
Do you see this? Do you see the Future Ready summits exploding the same way?
Well, I sure hope so. I mean, I am a Google fanboy, no question about it. I think that they are doing a lot to change the world. But, you know, I would like to see that the focus be less on a specific company and more on teachers. And that's kind of what EdTech Team is shooting for as well. We love having Google as a partner, and I can't say enough about the company, and look, everything is modeled after what they do. But I also would like to see, you know, really the focus being on pedagogy and you know, teaching. But, you know, you bring up pedagogy and you start putting people to sleep. You mentioned Google, and it gets people excited, right? So I think we need to, you know, walk that balance and make sure that we are, you know, meeting the teachers' needs and attracting teachers to see things that are really exciting. So, I mean, here's the truth about this. 20 time is not that new of a concept. It's been around for a really long time, but putting that Google frame on it allows people to understand it in a new way, and I think that's part of what's appealing to it. So anyway, the other thing that I really love about EdTech Team is that they're a benefit corporation, and what that means is even though they are a for-profit institution, their leadership decisions aren't simply governed by the profit motive. And so everyone on that team is really committed to education and changing education. And that's why they're also committed to that passion that I have of getting this technology in students' hands. And so they're giving away lots and lots of Chromebooks and tablets. And there's grants that are available for teachers to apply to at edtechteam.com.
Very nice. I didn't realize there were grants. That's great.
Yeah, let me get that link.
So where is this spreading? I'm barely getting it on the website. There's a map here. And I know you're doing your summits and you were naming all the places, but the Future Ready Initiative, who's already signed it? Where are the states that are really pushing it?
Well, it's not by any particular states, but it's by hundreds of superintendents that have made that pledge.
That's great.
But so the next question is, all right, so we've made this pledge. What do we do next? And
exactly.
I think it's about, you know, how do we get there? And I don't know. I think teacher training is the single greatest investment that a school can make.
Mm-hmm.
As long as they provide their students with the resources they need as well. But you know, you combine providing students with this technology and training the teachers in using it. I think that's where we should be dedicating our energy. That's why I'm excited about these summits that are coming up. So we're going to see those in Chicago and Iowa and New Jersey, but we're also open for partnering with other leaders out there who want a Future Ready Summit to come to them.
Yes, if somebody wanted a Future Ready Summit, what would they do?
So they would go to edtechteam.com.
Mm-hmm.
Let me see where that resource is. I don't have it. Let's see your requests.
We can find it. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, so edtechteam.com/requests. That's where you would go to make a request for a summit, and there you can request a Google Summit, but you can also request a Future Ready Summit. And we've got a really just amazing team of rock stars that can come out and develop a program to bring that Future Ready initiative right to you.
So, Kevin, can you tell us or tell the listeners where they can find out more about you, where they can get your book? Obviously, I'm sure they can get it on Amazon, but how can they? I know you're on Twitter and things like that.
Yeah. So, well, the first place I'd recommend people to go is to this website, 20time.org, and that has a lot of what you need to get started in your own 20time project. It's got the basics of the how, the 5 steps for getting getting a 20-time project going. And then you can right there. You can, if you want to dive in deeper, you can get the book, and you buy the book, and there's all kinds of resources in there. And I've got lot more links to videos, and there's a contact form for me there. But also, if you just Google my name, Kevin Brookhouser, that's where everything is. My Twitter handle is @Brookhouser, but really I'm pretty Googleable. I've got an unusual enough name.
Well, thank you for your time. It's definitely, you know, a lot of teachers are exploring this 20 time and Genius Hour and all these similar concepts. So
yeah, it's exciting stuff.
People who've done it can help people who haven't done it be successful. So
great. Well, thanks, John. Thanks, Troy.
Thank you.